Canterbury Earthquake Symposium. Just an update for councillors to see what. Oh, sorry, I can't seem to open the right agenda. Right, here we go. Canterbury Earthquake Symposium. So this is just a noting report. I just will make one point in relation to it. Under the budget, as you can see, there's Strategy and Transformation Group OPEX budget for recovery planning. This was always intended to be part of the resilience plan process with lessons learned. So there is funding within the organisation for this, but the bullet point that says, as the symposium and workshop events are invitation only, no charge for attendance will be applied, that hasn't been decided yet. So we're going to have a further conversation with the other side, with DPMC, about that. It seems to me that in a normal sense, a symposium would attract a fee, and that will help to defray the costs to both the government and to the council, and that is our intention, is to keep the costs at a minimum. We've got the venues at the University of Canterbury, so that makes it both accessible but also a much more reasonable cost in terms of the venue. So we'll continue to make sure that the costs are watched and kept a lid on. I think this is an important process. The first, there will be a set of workshops around some of the issues focused on the things that we did well, but also the things that we didn't do so well. We wouldn't want to see some things repeated, but obviously we would want to share those, and then onto the symposium itself. There is an intention to really reach forward to a major international conference happening here in Christchurch in 2021, which will be the 10th anniversary of the February earthquakes. And I think that if you look at what happened in Hyogo in Japan after or Hyogo Prefecture after the Kobe earthquake in 1995, 10 years later, a major conference, in fact it was the UN Conference on Disaster Risk Reduction, the World Conference on Disaster Risk Reduction was held there, and the Hyogo framework was what came from it. And of course now the Sendai framework has emerged from the conference in Sendai. The next international conference in that regard is not due until, I think it's not till 2030. I think they went further than the 10 years. I think they went to 15 years. I attended the Sendai conference in 2015, and it would be certainly a very well-timed and placed international conference to link in between Sendai and the next international conference on disaster risk reduction. So I think we've got something to offer the world, and will do more importantly by then. So I'll move that we note the report, and seconded by Sarah. Any discussion? Yanni?
Oh, it was just one question in the 5.2 with the workshop and symposium planning, and it talks about the 5 different workshops, and I know that there's still a lot of organisational stuff to happen, but I just wanted to understand how much sustainability and environmental impacts will be discussed. It's just not clear from 5.2 that there's consideration of that, but I know it's early days. So
yeah, well, we're having an internal workshop tomorrow, so I'll just make a note of that. It certainly will come up in the procurement delivery models issue and building standards, assessments and quality assurance. So, but that is not the only area where environmental considerations would apply. But the procurement delivery models would certainly raise an issue.
And just the regard. Other question I had was just to clarify. It sort of makes reference to this being a Canterbury and then a national focus. And so, is this something that is seen as people in the city who have been through the experience will be able to come and get a you know, and
No,
be involved, or is it more for people to come in and look at what's happened here and then learn the lessons?
So the workshops are more along those lines in order to focus on specific issues. But there is an enormous range of research that's already been done, and but there are also gaps, and it's important that the workshops identify where further work needs to be done. But the intention is that the workshops would then focus on that the workshops would then essentially report into the symposium. So, but it will be, as I understand, videoed so that it can be put online, and people will be able to access the presentations, as they were with the International Speaker Series, which you might recall.
Yeah, but those were open to the public.
Yes,
and
but they were half full,
yeah,
as you might recall,
yeah,
and the last thing that we want to do is to have a repetition of that. We need to have a very focused group of people, considering both the community elements of the recovery and the business side of it, and the procurement side. I mean, I think that these are really picking up the core issues that the major international conference in 2021 will be able to pick up other stuff as well, and that will be open to all. So I'll put Glenn and then Dion.
Thank you. I support this, and I support it particularly given that the funding comes from an existing budget. I think that's really good, and I'm sure it will prove to be good value for money, and that we as a city and province have much to contribute to the worldwide conversation over disaster and response and the time after. Part of me is thinking in one of the bullet points it talks about share lessons learned. I'm tempted to say still being learned, you know, when I think of outstanding insurance claims. And when you look at the workshops there, you could say that something like that, outstanding insurance claims, touches on mental health, business recovery in the commercial sector, recovery, leadership and governance, and building standards too. So I think we have a lot to contribute there. We also have a lot to contribute by way of the kind of thesis on disaster capitalism. You know, big ideas waiting for a disaster to happen, and I think we've seen that over the experiment that has been the Christchurch schools. So I very much support this symposium, and I'm sure we will contribute a lot, and I urge you to support this report as well.
Thank you. Dion?
I just wanted to contribute and say that the big picture is where I think this will actually land in moving forward. Not just the little semantics about what's going to be discussed and what's not going to be discussed and who's going to be involved and whatnot, but actually the big picture about Christchurch being the place where these lessons have actually been experienced in the first place. And I think that's what Christchurch needs to sort of, you know, leverage off. Because, I mean, I'm going to speak at a conference in Australia, and Leanne's spoken at a lot of them. There's global interest in how urban environments and the changing dynamics of disasters such as climate change, or just because people live in places that disasters are going to happen, where they've probably happened for centuries and millennia beforehand. But one of the things I really wanted to say is that through my own master's research, I came out with 14 research questions. 10 of them would have been perfect research questions for a PhD or some form of further research for what's happened here in Christchurch. And I think that all of the other research that I've watched or seen coming out of Christchurch from the disaster has further research questions. This is an amazing test bed for actually where research can come from. And one of the things I hope that we'll actually see from the symposium is actually how those can actually be transferred and actually making Christchurch the international place where research can happen about, you know, disaster recovery or what's going on, and actually that will stem a whole new industry of Christchurch being the place where anything is possible.
Thank you.
We'd have obviously welcome submissions of abstracts, Councillor Swick, so you've got a couple of weeks left to submit your abstract, and I'm sure it will
you write it for me?
Duly considered by officials.
So that was a debate point
sorry, I thought it was
rather
a
than a question.
Oh, can you? My question is, can you write it for me?
No. Right. So I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you.